Well, that's the other thing they said in your reviews. We can say things in Dr. Rectenwald's class that we can't say in others.
Yeah, I'm a believer in free speech and free inquiry. So that's why they felt that way, because I made it an environment in which they could challenge different views, and even the unthinkable could be discussed. Because I don't find anything off top, anything verboten. I wasn't running an indoctrination camp. I was running a classroom where I'm trying to instill and nurture and nourish people's minds to become developed, not to turn them into a certain type of stooge, which is what's going on.
Which is why they had to get rid of you, Mike.
It's possible. I mean, it's scary to think that, when I hit that social justice nerve or vein, I realized I hit a third rail. I didn't realize that it was that big of a deal, but it must be something very structurally important to these elitists and globalists, in this kind of the deep state.
It's their business model. It's how they make money.
I don't yeah, it's crazy. I've been.
It's how they get grants. It's how they get promoted.
Yes. So I've been investigating just how and why this is so important, how and why this works for them,
And it comes down to money, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
but
prestige.
They're trying to create a system of monopolies. This is really what it is. I have nothing against the free market. This is not the free market. This is monopoly capitalism, cronyism, which is an attempt to reduce the population to a kind of subsistence level, while the elite run the corporate level, the high monopolistic tier. Mm-hmm. And as long as they have people believing there's equality on the bottom, those people are content, not realizing that they're being run over. I call it corporate socialism is what's going on.
And Mike, what was it in your book, Springtime for Snowflakes? And it's a fantastic book. I encourage everyone to get it. Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and Its Postmodern Parentage. But they can go to Amazon, type in Springtime for Snowflakes, and it comes up.
Oh, yeah, it comes up.
Okay, so what was it in that book, do you think, that really got to them?
Well, I mean, I explored, because I know the history, and I was trained in this field. I was trained in Marxism. I know all the history, the theoretical basis for it. I know the feminisms. I was trained in all these fields, so I can point out the roots of all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And they can't dispute it, Dave. I mean, I've had leftists going through the book, scouring for errors or criticisms. To tell you the truth, they said, I got reports from all over the place. They go, it's impeccable. We can't touch it. It's actually really good.
Which is why they had to get rid of you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So to think that our educational system is this debased, such that real scholars must be removed rather than encouraged or supported, is really shocking. I mean, because I was kind of idealistic, I guess, sort of stupid about, I guess I believed in academic freedom too. And I actually acted like I could exercise it. So my famous quote is, academic freedom is great as long as you don't use it.
And now you have actually used it. And you've come out with another book called Google Archipelago. Right. Educate our listeners on how that's going to upset the Bolshevik left.
Well, let me go back to one thing that's I want to say before I go on. When I mentioned about the Marxist professors in the university, mm-hmm. What I was getting at there is this. It would be a scandal to have Nazi professors, right? Because the Nazis killed people, made the Holocaust, the death camps, and so forth. Well, the communists were the biggest killers.
They sure were.
They killed 100 million people. Mm-hmm. They didn't kill them on the basis of ethnicity or religion, but they killed ethnic groups. Ukraine, they killed Ukrainians en masse. They killed the Cossacks en masse. They killed all kinds of ethnicities en masse if they were in the way. They bulldozed into Yugoslavia. They killed those people. They killed everybody that was in the way. And the reason they could kill so without conscience is because they are materialists. And they don't think there's anything beyond matter in the world. There's no value other than matter. There's nothing else. So if you're in the way, Dave, you're just like a piece of furniture or a mud hill, which they will just mow down because you just matter. So this is why I wanted to say that. But anyway, back to the Google Archipelago. So the book is named after Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, The Gulag Archipelago, which is a 3-volume series, a brilliant study of the Gulag in which he lived for 7 to 8 years in the Soviet Union as a prisoner. So I gave the title in honor of Solzhenitsyn and the struggle as a dissident that he had in living in the Gulag. And so what does the Gulag represent that the digital Gulag, as I call it, represents? And what does it do? How are they similar? The Gulag system in the Soviet Union was a way of censoring, surveilling, and effectively then deleting or erasing, disappearing people that weren't politically correct. Seriously, that, by the way, the term politically correct was invented by none other than Vladimir Lenin. Okay? That's the first usage of the term. So the right has been correct in saying that political correctness is totalitarian. Okay, so the Google Archipelago similarly is a way of policing, censoring, steering, manipulating, and disappearing people from the digital sphere. And it's not corporal punishment, but it is as deadly in many cases because it can represent the social death of people. It can represent the social death of ideas that are not conforming to the dominant ideology. It can represent the same kind of surveillance of people that we see going on Facebook and the way they're and then it also represents the sort of same ideological authoritarianism. That is, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they're all leftists. And what I mean by this is that they're enforcing a kind of a belief system that only is left-leaning, but it's authoritarian. They demand conformity to this. Or you just get excluded. You just get wiped out. Your websites are debunked. They're ranked lower. They're blacklisted. All these kind of things are happening. In fact, Facebook used the same language that the Soviet Union did to describe what they called dangerous persons. They used the same words to, the hate speech language in Facebook is the exact same language that the Soviet used to describe their dissidents, those who dissented from Soviet orthodoxy. Dangerous persons.
So, Mike, let me run something by you that just occurred actually at one of my alma maters, where I went to medical school, Northwestern, in Chicago. Newspaper will stop reporting any news traumatic to snowflakes.
Yes, exactly.
This college newspaper will no longer report triggering news. Northwestern is one of the finest universities in the world and is particularly renowned for its journalism school. This is from Simon Black from Sovereign Man. Mm-hmm. The Daily Northwestern student paper, staffed by these aspiring journalists, recently apologized for covering a traumatic event on campus. What was that traumatic event, Mike? A speech by former Trump official Jeff Sessions, former Attorney General. Unsurprisingly, some students protested the ex-Attorney General's speech, and the newspaper covered the protest. But the paper said they inadvertently, quote, re-traumatized, end quote, these protesters in reporting the story. Like, for example, as past generations were traumatized by fighting in the Vietnam War or having police dogs sicked on them while marching for equal rights. Nope. All it takes these days, Mike, for these snowflakes is to be traumatized as a newspaper article about a man who has differing political opinions.
That's
so
right.
The paper apologized, published an editorial promising that if a news event could be, quote, triggering to the snowflakes, end quote, it just won't be reported.
All right, let me speak to that. So one of the things one of the interpretations is, well, what a fragile population. They're such a weaklings. Yeah, I agree. But here's the thing. That's not the end of the story. What they're doing is they use fragility or their snowflake status as a means of totalitarianism. This is a method to control the discourse, to banish ideas and perspectives and people who don't represent. So this is they have basically weaponized their fragility. So I call it snowflake authoritarianism or snowflake totalitarianism.
And it's really the university archipelago, really, isn't it?
That's right. Well, see, that's why I studied. What I've noticed is that the same ideology that runs academia is running cyberspace.
Yep. And here we go.
Yeah. So they use this sort of a snowflake weakness. So identity is weaponized altogether. And they're weaponizing these people's so-called traumas as a way of excluding other people's ideas.
Right.
There was, by the way, there's a mistaken notion amongst this snowflake generation or crowd. It's more than a generation. It's a couple generations. They think they have a right not to be offended.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such right in the Constitution. There's no right not to be offended. I don't know where they get this idea from, but they actually believe it. That they have a right not to be offended.
So you got in trouble for a tweet. That started it all off.
Series of tweets, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I want to take you to the University of California at Berkeley.
Yeah.
Here is a tweet from a professor who teaches philosophy. You ready?
Yeah.
Quote, I unironically embrace the bashing of rural Americans. They, as a group, are bad people who have made bad life decisions. This nostalgia for some imagined pastoral way of life is stupid, and we should shame people who aren't pro-city, end quote. Well, how Bolshevik, Mike, of that professor?
I mean, this is unbelievable. I have read statements regarding this with the same exact sentiment and the same content from the Soviets about the peasants in the countryside. They said the same exact things, and guess what they were used for? They were used for a justification of slaughtering them. Mm-hmm. This is absolute totalitarian language. This person, and this is the civility that they were trying to hold me to. These people are civil. I mean, these are people, I've seen tweets by professors like one at Georgetown who said about the Kavanaugh hearings that all the Republican senators who supported Kavanaugh should have their genitals cut off and eaten by pigs. Okay, that's the civility they were trying to hold me to. That's the standard, I guess. See, it has nothing to do with civility. It's about what you're saying and whether you're on the right side. And, they talk about misogyny in the right wing. Have you ever seen women more degraded than by leftists who are attacking a woman on the conservative side? I've never seen anything like it.
Well, and someone who comes to mind on that is Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. And I've met her, and we met at Fox News. She has been treated like garbage. And they call her, by Antifa. Antifa members called her a white supremacist.
Okay, now we're on. I got to bring this up. I mentioned my one alma mater, Northwestern, when I went to med school.
Yeah.
Where I went to undergrad, okay, and double majored in chemistry and economics. And the economics department was beyond left to center.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure. Yeah.
And they used to call me Capitalist Dave and Free Market Dave. Now, here's the difference when I went to college, Mike.
That was fine at that time. Yeah.
It was okay. I was kind of like, Janda, isn't that funny how he, Dave, we're going to spew our stuff for the first 50 minutes of class, and we'll give you the last 5 or 6 minutes to, counter it. And isn't this funny? Okay? Yeah, but they never discriminated against me.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, they never did. I have to give them that. They vehemently disagreed with me.
Yeah.
But they allowed me to express myself and didn't penalize me. Right now, Mike, that's not the case. And so where I went to school, Bucknell, that allowed that.
Yeah.
Okay. They've hosted a series of lecturers and presenters who are far left.
Mm-hmm. They
do everything in their power to block anybody that's even middle of the road, let alone conservative.
Sure.
This from the day before September 11th of this year. Bucknell hosts pro-Antifa lecture on eve of the 9/11 anniversary.
Yeah.
On the eve of the 18th anniversary of 9/11, Bucknell University hosted Antifa member Mark Bray.
Yes, I know about him.
A staunch defender of the political violence that has terrorized the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, he spoke. He donated his proceeds of his last book, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, to the far-left protest group that inspired most of his work.
Yeah.
Bray is an advocate for and participant in Antifa, an amorphous group of communists and anarchists, this is from Breitbart, who engage in thuggish street violence, attacking property and individuals they label fascist or white supremacists, designations they use sufficiently liberally as to include just about anyone they feel like vilifying and attacking. Right?
Yeah.
In his book, Antifa, Bray carefully adheres to this crude and toxic system of definition, calling all those who support the current president of the United States everyday fascists, and wrapping up with a concluding chapter with the astounding title, Whiteness is Indefensible. Okay, now listen. The president of the university not only supported him coming on campus, but funded him coming on campus, bringing a known terrorist on that campus, putting every student, faculty member, and staff member in harm's way.
Yes, it's amazing. They have actually, I think the same professor tried to establish an Antifa professorial network of professors in support of Antifa. I talked about this on Life Zet, Paula Zet, about how outrageous this is, that these people are defending and actually supporting a very violent group, and furthermore, that these people do not understand the history of leftist violence, which is much greater than its counterpart. Factually true. And they are, amazingly, they imagine themselves to be morally superior than everybody based on their leftist ideology, but they never acknowledge the crimes of the left. Now, let me just say this other thing. These people call themselves Antifa. They resemble nothing more than they do fascists. And I am doing some research on fascism, and frankly, it is a twin of socialism. It grew out of socialism. Mussolini was a leading socialist in Italy. He was an editor of a publication called Utopia. He fostered socialism and then slid into nationalism, and it became fascism. They are twins. They have more in common with fascism than any right-wingers do in this country, because we're individualists. We believe in the individual and individual rights. They're collectivists. Fascism means a bundle. It literally is collectivist in its very name. And just like socialists, they're collectivists. They just took the collectivism to a different place. But it's incredible to me that they know no history about any of this. They don't realize they're birds of a feather with fascists, and yet they're calling everybody else a fascist. It's beyond words. I mean, the idiocy, the political illiteracy, and the historical myopia are incredible.
Mike, I want to conclude our interview on this. Many of our listeners are parents to children who are about to go to college or looking at universities, or our grandparents and their grandchildren are looking at university.
Yeah.
And frankly, after our conversation, They're beyond concerned.
They should be.
Right. So what do you say to them? What do they... I mean, this seems to be pervasive throughout the higher education right now. What do they do with their kids who, let's say, have to go to college in order to get into graduate schools that they, for example, if they want to become a physician, they got to go to college. You just can't go to medical school.
Exactly.
Right. So what do they do?
Well, first of all, we shouldn't be at all... we shouldn't at all be self-deluded to the extent that we think this indoctrination hasn't started much earlier.
Right.
In fact, it's starting in kindergarten. So we have, as I call it, it's K through PhD indoctrination. So they should start earlier, first of all, in trying to inoculate their kids against this ideology, because it's very pernicious, and for the reasons we've given. As far as the colleges and universities go, 99.9% are utterly infiltrated. Okay, so, and this, I have a son, for example, he's studying pre-med. Every book, every textbook is riddled with this stuff, even science. The STEM fields are not safe. You have to go through the social justice indoctrination for any field now. So I say that there are a few exceptions, and they're very few, and they should be considered very strongly. Now, one of them is Hillsdale. Unfortunately, in a way, it's fortunate. They don't take federal funding, even in the form of student loan money. So they have put a paywall between themselves and this insidious movement. Hillsdale, one. There's Grove City College, which is very close to where I am right now. There's a few others that are sort of offstanding, but it's very hard to even find. Like Pepperdine is listed as a conservative university, but frankly, I've looked at their curriculum and it's riddled with all this stuff.
What about online universities, Mike?
Well, Liberty, frankly. I never would, by the way, I never would have thought I would recommend Liberty. Because I was, come on, religious education, that's ideology, you're just brainwashing. The funny thing is, the places that were considered brainwashing sites are actually the free-thinking sites. So the leftists have everything backwards.
Yeah.
They think that everybody else is under ideology, but they are. They think they're the underdogs, but they're not. They're dominating. They think that they're the only ones that are not religious, but they're under a severely, very constrained religion. So I would say very carefully look at the schools, look at the curricula, look at the actual course descriptions if possible, and see if there's any places that are pockets that are safe from this. But I would say even before that, you need to inoculate your son or daughter or, God forbid, non-binary person against the insidious disease. It's an infection, I would call it. How do you do that? Through reading, but also through talking, through analysis. Talk to them through about these things like gender, that there's no such thing as you're a man if you say you are, or you're a woman if you say you are, irregardless of your genitalia or your DNA, or your chromosomes. This is all nonsense, and it has to be confronted directly.
Michael Rectenwald, Rectenwald, michaelrectenwald.com. The Anti-PC Prof, YouTube, or the Walden, Walden 9, number 9, right up.
Yeah, they'll probably be collapsed into one, but yeah, it'll be the Anti-PC Prof.
They can follow you on Twitter.
Anti-PC NYU Prof. I kept that handle.
Anti-PC NYU Prof is your Twitter handle. Facebook. Yep.
Michael Rectenwald. They'll find me.
We need to make sure that what folks do is that they support what you're doing. Because you are supporting an independent alternative education for folks.
Yeah.
And you're doing that through your website, through your writings. They can get your books through Amazon. Springtime for Snowflakes, Google Archipelago. Again, outstanding books that they should not only have for the holidays, but for year round, and network to anyone and everyone they know. But you also have a GoFundMe link on your homepage of your website.
Right.
And this is what supports, because the deep state, the leftist Bolsheviks, the Marxists in education, in academia, if you want to call it that, they've all targeted you.
Yeah.
And one way they target you, because they've tried this with me, is they try to starve you out.
Yes. I'm blackballed.
If they can hit you financially and starve you out, they believe they can shut you up.
True.
So I encourage folks to go to michaelrectenwald.com, go to that homepage. I know the economy can be very, very tough on folks, but here's somebody you can support who provides content to you on his website, on the YouTube channel, and through his writings, his essays and his books that you will not get from any other source. And it's a great investment. And I thank you, Mike, for your sacrifice in doing that, because it is a sacrifice.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it very much.
michaelrectenwald.com, the Anti-PC Prof YouTube channel, Twitter, Anti-PC-NYU Prof.
Right.
I thank you, Mike. And I
you,
truly, truly thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. And my dad's favorite saying was dream big and dare to fail. And Mike, you are the epitome of that statement. And I thank you for your sacrifice and all that you're doing. Folks, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time. Until next time, Dave Jandis signing off. Dream big and dare to fail.